Hi all, I have a very interesting example of Magnus Carlsen playing the Jobova system. So a very interesting game. This is against the opponents called Undefeated 6. It was a Chess24 online blitz game. D4 from Magsy Bogues, aka Magnus Carlsen. Knight f6, knight c3, d5, bishop f4. We have c6 being played. E3. So it's like the London system, but with a knight on c3 instead of a pawn on c3. The dreaded London system bishop striking on this diagonal. We have bishop f5. Now f3. And Magnus actually has commentary on this game, his own commentary, which is really interesting to listen to. So I'm going to be providing some extra technical variations to that. But he basically recognized that this is the Italian system on the other side of the board. So in the Italian game, with e4, e5, bishop c4 later, there's often c3 and b4 to gain tempo on the bishop on c5. So this is like on the other side of the board. We have a tempo gaining target here with g4 and h4. So it's interesting that ideas can be leveraged by some transformations. So maybe leverage some important ideas from other variations. So he himself finds that fascinating, that it's like that. Queen b6. This does seem to strike at a particular downside of the bishop being on f2, neglecting b2. So here is where a lot of the technical lines actually are interesting to consider. What happens if the queen does take on b2 at certain points? Here g4 was played, ignoring b2. The bishop dropped back actually. If queen takes b2 here, if white can get that light square bishop, so okay, it's a pawn, but it's also a road. In a blitz game, these active roads into the opponent's position can be dangerous, and a tempo gain on the queen. For practical purposes, in the time control, this would be great compensation. White has lots of piece activity, a nice b file to play with. Technically, okay, computers might think black has a small edge, but in practice, we're no different. Okay, so bishop g6, h4 threatening to trap that bishop, h5 is played here. On h6, queen d2, for example, and h5, white's going to get a small edge here, for sure. That's pretty nice, no problems there. On 7, queen takes b2 here. Interestingly here, king d2 protects c2 with the threat of h5, and if h5 here, rook b1, rook takes b7, and you can see that white's not only gaining space but has fantastic b file usage, and this is just a fantastic position to have with the white pieces. Big advantage for white. So h5 was played, g5, knight fd7. Again here, if we look just for a moment here, knight ge2 is good here. And again, that b file, even if the c pawn's sacked, this position is quite dangerous with this bishop like this. In the Italian game, if you're aware of the Italian game, bishop a3 is often good on this diagonal. So the symmetry at work for different ideas in different variations. You can see, you can get some leverage of ideas. This bishop on this diagonal is particularly dangerous. So for example, like this, and white is getting a really nice position, threatening nasty knight takes g6. This could shatter up black's pawn structure. White's going to end up with a big advantage there. So knight fd7, bishop d3. Now bishop takes d3 was played. Again here, let's have a look. Queen takes b2, knight ge2 is sufficient, and taking with the c pawns keep the rook protected. And yes, it looks like a kind of poison pawn analysis, really, what we're doing here. But with g6 now, that is a really dangerous idea for white. And white's getting a small edge there. So bishop takes d3, queen takes g6. And one last look at queen takes b2 now. Rook b1, again, g6 is an important idea here. And white's getting a big advantage there. Okay, so g6. Finally, the b2 pawn is protected. Hooray! No more examination of queen takes b2. So the problems for black. The black king's still in the centre. White's king is now quite cozy on the queen side. We have e6, e4. And Magnus noted, even though the position is kind of locked here, sealed, white's got extra space, and there's always sacrificial possibilities actually. This pawn chain is not so stable without the light square bishop. There's potential for sacrificing on e6 and g6 at various points once the rooks come to the centre and the knight comes to f4. This pawn chain isn't as solid as you might think. I'll try and demonstrate that. Bishop b4, knight ge2, knight a6 is played. As a demo, why this pawn chain isn't so solid here. Instead of knight a6, if black routinely castled kingside, let's say king b1, a3, and the bishop goes back. Bishop g3, vacating f4 for the knight. And we can see that after knight f4, it looks as though black's kind of safe. But here comes an attack. Knight takes g6, especially with that queen on b6 here, trying to gobble the poison pawn. It's kind of misplaced here. And this knight sack is pretty potent, just wiping out a lot of pawns with a strong attack. So that shows some of the dangers here. And in this line, if ed, then rook takes e8 check, queen takes. This pawn chain's falling, basically. White's getting a big advantage there. So it's not that solid as this shows. This starts to echo. So knight a6, black is not content with castling queenside. But with this bishop pointing in this diagonal, this looks very, very dangerous to even castle queenside. a3, bishop takes c3. If the bishop retreated, then bishop g3 and castling queenside, we have ed here. This is very, very dangerous for black indeed. So for example, c takes, there's knight b5 with the big idea of queen c3 check, and that bishop is covering escape squares of the king. So this is actually devastating. And if queen c6, knight takes a7, wins the queen. So that is devastating stuff here. If black castled kingside there, knight f4, we see a repeat of basically the pawn chain is pretty fragile. d5 is a key move, breaking through like this. And here, yeah, black's getting in real trouble, for example, with rook d6, with ideas of rook g6 and queen f6. So that's actually devastating, threatening queen h8 there. This is all over, of course. Okay, so very dangerous position. So we have actually bishop takes c3, knight takes c3. Now knight c7, Magnus described this as a tempting fate because of ideas like knight a4. It doesn't quite work, knight a4, to kind of get rid of the protector of the knight. We have rook he1, a much more solid, sensible move, just threatening to strike at d5 under the right circumstance with the king in the centre. If knight a4 had been played, it seems queen a5 might be the most accurate. So here, if b4, queen takes a4, and that's absolutely fine for black. There's no point losing a4 for c7 there. On queen b5, in fact, this is slightly different. Without any b4 included, this is actually quite strong for white. Very strong for white, in fact. Good, very good position. But yeah, the sufficient move for black is queen a5 here, it seems. So rook he1, we had rook c8, and now white kind of cashes out, weakening d5 with bishop takes c7. So d5 is about to be blasted after ed. It's kind of all over here. This is a devastating position for black to be in. We have a desperate looking check. On c takes, then knight takes covers queen f4 check and introduces horrible possibilities. After knight c3, white's just getting a big advantage there. In fact, that's fine, simple enough. So check was played, king b1, c takes, knight takes d5, and black's idea to go pawn hunting, queen takes h4 was played. On queen b8, knight c3 renews d5, of course, and if black castles, you can see the pawn chain isn't that stable, because, bang, rook takes e6, for example, like this, wiping out black's pawns, a familiar theme. So those pawns which seem solid can sometimes be just dismantled. Black without the light square bishop, yeah, is prone to this kind of sacrifice. If knight takes queen h7 as mate, and here this is just devastating. White's just loads of pawns up. If we look at this again, on queen b8, knight c3 castles, but on knight b6, there's d5 and d takes. So yeah, it's this is just devastating. Rook takes e6 here. Yeah, black doesn't seem to be able to do too much after queen b8, knight c3, castling. So queen takes h4. Now there's a really super duper powerful move here. Black maybe has been tempting Magnus to get overexcited, but Magnus plays a move which is as cool as a cucumber, which I'll give you 500 points for. And I'll give you minus 500 for another idea. Okay, I might have given you a hint. You're looking for a cool, super cool move. What would you play here with white if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? And it really presents a huge number of problems for black. And it actually does reflect a chess quotation, a famous one. That's a clue as well. Okay, why have just one pin when you can have 2 pins? The move is queen b5. Just pinning that knight. It's a really devastating move, really. If rook takes e6, you might have thought this is tempting to dismantle the pawn chain. Doesn't quite work out here. This looks dangerous, but rook e8, it seems as though black's covering the squares for a while. So black's got a material advantage there. So queen b5 though, huge problems are presented to black. Black castles, which kind of loses immediately to check. And knight takes c8, and black had to resign there. Yeah, losing the knight after. That's total devastation. If rook d8, then actually, can you see the key move here if I give you 5 seconds to pause video? White to play here. Okay, it seems the most accurate move is queen b4, getting that nice common square of the queen and knight, coordinating on e7. And actually, if queen takes, there's knight c7 checkmate as well. So that doesn't really do any help for e7. And if knight c5, that's obviously just losing a piece. Well, first knight f6 check to safeguard the knight, then taking here. Thanks very much, piece up, end of game really. If queen takes g5 instead, then can you see what white plays here if I give you 5 seconds to pause the video? Okay, knight c7 check, nice forcing move, exposes a discovery on the queen, so getting the queen there, that's massive, of course. So yeah, in the game, yeah, it was pretty desperate, castle check, and then taking on c8, so d7 will drop as well, a whole rook up. So I hope you enjoyed this game example. You can get very, very exciting games in Blitz. And Magnus is more experimental the faster the time control. But his experiment with the Jobova London system, very, very interesting. And you can check out a free, short and sweet interactive course at Chessable on that Kingscrusher TV/Jobova link you can see there. So hope you check that out. And there's a great video analysis by Grandmaster Simon Williams, aka Ginger GM. Very, very spicy analysis. So yeah, the Jobova system, especially in Blitz, could be a really formidable surprise weapon. This putting a knight on c3 instead of a pawn on c3, having the London system bishop, and getting leverage from the Italian game. If you've played the Italian game with ideas of c3, b4, a lot of similar parallel universe ideas. Like sometimes in the Italian game the bishop is on that diagonal. Here we saw sometimes the bishop was great on this diagonal. So very, very interesting to leverage Italian game ideas on the other side of the board. Okay, hope you enjoyed it. Thanks very much.